Hey folks, it's Tom, your frugal prepper. I'm out here early in the morning. I forgot to put the unused axle back in this car so that the customer can return it. And I need to do that in case they come to pick it up today when I'm at work. But as you can tell, my workbench is pretty messy. There's axle grease on the floor. Just a nightmare. This car has been the most challenging car I've done in a while. It's a Lexus LS 460. It's a nice car. Got the big old V8 in it. I think she's pretty fast. I didn't give it the beans when I took it for a test drive because I don't want it to break. But it seemed like it had plenty of power there if I would have gave it the beans. But well, let me get this in the car. Okay, there we go. All right. So, this was a challenging one. So, it needed it had some bad CV boot joints, or CV boots on the CV joints, and so I said, well, let's just put new axles in it. Don't worry about redoing the boots because you're going to have as much in labor typically as you do axles. And that's true on any other car. This thing had an axle stuck in the transmission on the driver's side. Now, the carrier bearing's on the passenger side. We'll get to that in a minute. The driver's side axle would not come out of the transmission. I finally had to get a slide hammer, a pair of vice grips, hook them to the slide hammer, and hammer on that axle, and it finally popped loose. And the little snap ring was just a little goobered up. Put the new axle in. I go to put it together, put the car back together. I end up dropping the suspension, and it comes out, and the tree comes out of the axle, and it won't go back in. It just won't. Like, normally you can wiggle them, move them around, and they'll pop right back in. This one wouldn't. So, I go to remove that. I had to take that axle apart to get it out so I can put the slide hammer on it. So now I got to redo that CV boot clamp. Great, right? And I find that the snap ring that they put on the tree had come loose and fallen down inside the axle, and that was what was stopping it from going back in. So I put the snap ring back on, I add some grease to it, get the boot back on, put a boot clamp on it, slide it back in there, get it up, we're ready to go. I go over to the other side. Now, most Toyotas have a carrier bearing on the axle on the passenger side. And most of the time, you can just hit that with an air hammer, that little carrier, and it'll come loose. And most of the time, that carrier is separate from the transmission. It's a steel piece. And the worst case is you cut the axle in half, and then you can take the carrier off, and then take the carrier out and hammer on it, right? And so this has a similar setup, except the carrier is part of the transmission, part of the aluminum transmission. It's got that same snap ring and bolt you take out, and I'm hammering on it, and I'm hammering on it, and I'm hammering on it. And I'm like, I don't feel like I can step this up to a 5-pound sledgehammer because that's in the aluminum side of the transmission. And if that breaks the transmission, then we got a real mess, right? If it busts that housing. The carrier bearing's good, so I called the customer. I said, I think we're just going to have to redo that axle in place. You can return that other axle to Amazon. So I went through, I've gone through 4 or 5 different boot kits till I found one that fits, because it's a strange size on the inside versus the outside. I've been trying to get the right CV clamps, because those ones that have a little thing that goes through that you bend over, those work fine on the small sides for me, but not so well on the bigger sides, unless I can get them out to my vise where I can put them on with the right tool. But trying to do it under the car, you just can't. can't get, so days go by, I can't get O'Reilly's to deliver these clamps that I've ordered online. And they're just not available, and nobody has them in stock. There's like a CV clamp shortage going on right now. I don't know if we're on the slow boat from China or what. So finally, these universal ones came from Amazon, and I was able to get that back together. And I'm putting the car back together, and I'm just about where I'm ready to put on the 42 plastic and metal covers that go under this thing. It's insane, right? And I look on my workbench over here, and I see the C-clip that goes on the tree on that freaking axle. I forgot to put it in. So then I had to tear that suspension back apart, and the suspension on these is a weird suspension. It's a kind of a pain in the butt. I tear the suspension apart, get the axle back out. I cut the clamp that I finally put on, bring it over here to the vise, put the C-clip on it, add a little bit more grease, put it back in the car, put a C-clamp on it, put that side back together, and it's clipped and it's good. Because without that clip, the end can actually slide off the axle, and then you end up with a mess. So I can't ship it that way, And I'm glad I realized it, right? And I just double checked that I had everything tight. I had cotter pins and all the nuts. I double check, just double and triple check everything when you tear a car apart like that. Double check the axle nuts, all that stuff. And it's finally done. But that was supposed to be a 2 or 3 hour job. Pop in a couple axles. And it turned into a week-long pain in the butt. I didn't charge the customer more than the 2 hours of labor, plus the cost of the parts. Because sometimes things go wrong like that, and you make a bad call, and you don't quote enough labor, and things just happen. And I eat that for my customers, usually. And you lose money on some, but you make it up on others. So when I work on your car and the book says it takes 2 hours and I get it done in 40 minutes, I don't want to hear like I shouldn't be charging extra. I shouldn't charge more than 40 minutes. It's because I've done the job before. I have the right tools. I know exactly what to do. And it goes really smooth. But I run into cases like this where, I'm basically working for free. But it's okay. I made a little bit of money, and it's out of here. And he's got another vehicle he's bringing me for a transmission mount. So it all works out in the end. But you have to be ready to take on those jobs. And when you only have one garage and one bay, you'll have to be ready to reschedule everybody down the line until this one's done, And it just is what it is. That's what happens when you don't have a full-on shop with multiple bays and lifts and everything. But anyway, that's all I got, folks. I'll talk to y'all later. It's Tom, your frugal prepper. And here's the car. This is a really nice car. It's raining out here now. But yeah, it's really nice. It's a 2012. It's got the big V8 in it. It's got the all leather seats and the total wheel and everything. It's got all the options. It drives nice. It's a nice car to drive, but I put driving second and make sure my vehicles are easy to work on and maintain first. But that's just me. I'll talk to y'all later. Later on.